This is deliveranceministry.fm VideoCast number 39. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of deliveranceministry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. This is Dr. Don Ibbotson once again. Happy to be here in front of the microphone along with my co-host, Dr. Phyllis Tarbox. Hello, Phyllis.
Hi,
Welcome
Don.
again, as always.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It is good. We have a lot of fun doing these. We try to put them together the best we can and based on the inputs that we get from you. So I'll just say that right from the get-go, please. Specific topics or things you'd like us to go into in the realm of spiritual warfare or deliverance ministry or demonic realm, please let us know and we'll look that over, and if it's good and enough interest, we'll put something together for you. Today we've got a continuation of the series that we're doing on spiritual warfare, if you like, or tactics or emphasis for different temperament types. In the first episode of the series, episode 37, we talked about and introduced the concept of temperaments, talked about the 5 different temperament types and different aspects of the temperament. Encourage you to go back and listen to that. Certainly can't go over that here today, but if you listen to that and then listen to this, you'll get a lot out of it. Today we're going to be focusing on the supine temperament, or the servant temperament, if you like. It's one of the 5, and we're going to talk about the aspects of the temperament, the main weaknesses of the temperament, most common demonic strongholds that we see in people who are primarily of this temperament, and then we're going to give you some specific suggestions, if you like, that you can use to maybe wage spiritual warfare more effectively. Because the whole idea of this series is that our temperaments, God gave us temperaments. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. The demonic kingdom can observe us. They hear what we say. They see what we do. They know a lot about us. They don't need to read our minds to know a lot. And they'll use different tactics on people based upon how we're wired, if you like. So that's the purpose. And we want to jump right in now to talk about the supine temperament. So Phyllis, start us off. Give us some of the main elements, if you like, or characteristics of someone who is primarily a supine. And we've talked about they can be inclusion, control, or affection, 3 different aspects of the temperament. But maybe in one or more of these areas, they're primarily supine in temperament. What does that mean?
Well, these are the servants, Lord. These are the ones that have the servant's heart. I think they have the most sensitive of all the hearts and most gentle. They truly are. That they will serve until they can't serve any longer. That can also help them to be a doormat a little bit too. Need hurt feelings if they're over serving and they're not getting the recognition that they need. They're typically followers. They're not leaders. They don't want to make the decision. They don't want to be put in charge, but they want to have they want to follow and they want to help.
And they're dependable, right?
They
you can
are
count
very.
on the supines.
Yes.
They will serve, like you say, they'll do it.
Mm-hmm, they will. And they're, like I said before, they're very gentle. So they're not going to overrun anyone. They're not going to force their way. They're very happy to follow along and just be a very loyal follower. So they're the kind of people that enforce the policies that are set by others, and they're servants. So.
And I think in the realm of what we call affection, or the ability to, in their interactions with what we call deep personal relationships, they're very guarded emotionally, tend to be, and they will open up when they feel safe, and they need to feel safe. But if they're treated properly, they're just because of their servants, and they'll give and give. They're capable of just absolute and total commitment.
I call this
to their deep relationships.
I call this the cat temperament, because they will observe you. And they wait for you to approach them. They're not going to approach you. They're not going to initiate. So they'll wait for you to approach them. And then you almost have to prove to them that they're safe and with you. But then, like you said, once they are, the cat will just love you and purr around you and just be as lovable as they can be.
Exactly. And that's it. They tend to be the ones in the back. They like, by servant natures, love to serve. They're in the background.
Right.
And many times you won't always hear them. But man, they're great strengths, as they say. I think those are worth emphasizing, because we're going to talk about the weaknesses. But look at churches, ministries, people.
Everybody wants them.
Everybody loves the Supines because they will serve. They generally they like people, and they have a desire to serve others, and it's genuine for the most part. It really is. It's there comes at a bit of a cost, and we'll talk about some of the weaknesses associated with it. But generally, the Supines tend to be gentle spirits.
Yeah, they are.
They're just created that way, and very gentle, very dependable, as they say. They will follow the book, follow the rules. They're good, great caretakers, very loyal. And once again, they're able to they will pour into our relationships and do
endlessly. They'll give you the shirt off their back.
Off their back, literally. Exactly.
Literally, yes.
Yeah, literally.
I've had them do that to me. I walk up to them and say, "Oh, I just love that scarf." And the next thing I know, it's in my purse.
Wow.
Got to be careful with them.
There you go. Well, that's nice. That's, like I say, sweet people, sweetheart, sweet and gentle spirits. And so those are the strengths. Now, and once again, the whole idea is the temperaments. Every temperament there's no better or worse temperaments. We've talked about the 5 different temperaments, and melancholy, supine, sanguine, choleric, and phlegmatic. This is the supine temperament. There's no better or worse, but there are different, and there are strengths and weaknesses with each temperament. And the idea is now, as we look at the weaknesses, if we got weaknesses, it shows us where we're vulnerable in the realm of the demonic realm. And it also shows us, in just the counseling side of things, it's like, well, Lord, this is a weakness in my temperament. Lord, change me and transform me in this area, right? It's not an excuse for bad behavior. Sometimes people, that's just how I am. It's like, well, no, there's weaknesses there. And when you know what they are, and you give the Lord permission, and you yield and give him an opportunity to make changes there and be transformed into his likeness, there can be real changes come forth. So what are some of the main specific weaknesses, if you like, that are common to the supine temperament?
Well, I think the biggest weakness right off the bat is that they have a very difficult time expressing their needs to others. They pretty much expect you to read their mind. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in the car with one. I won't name names, but I was in the car with a supine, and I asked that person, "Would you like to stop at Dunkin' Donuts on the way to church and get a cup of coffee?" And their answer was, "Oh, no, that's okay." And then a few minutes later, I said, "Are you sure you don't want a cup of coffee before we go to church?" No, that's okay. And then I said, "You know what? I want a cup of coffee, so I'm going to pull in." And their response was, "Oh, thank God." And I looked at them and I said, "Why in the world would you not tell me the first time I asked you that you want?" "Well, I didn't want to put you out of your way. I didn't want you to have to make a special stop just for me." And that's very typical of the supine.
Exactly. And I think you hear that a lot. I hear it in marriage counseling situations, and I'm sure you do too. And it's say, especially, I shouldn't have to tell you.
Right. You should know.
You should know.
They expect that of their relationships.
Well, and I get it. Sometimes in marriage counseling situations, somebody's told them 20 times and they still don't hear. I get that.
Yeah.
But many times they're just not really good. That one spouse or that one person is saying what they want. It's just, out of fear, out of just not feeling good enough, feeling worthless. It's like you said, I don't want to put you out. It's like, who am I?
Well, they want I think the servant part comes into this too, because they really want what you want. They want you to be happy first. Even just in choosing a restaurant. Well, where would you like to go? Oh, wherever you want to go. Well, they have desires where they'd like to go, but they'll defer those desires to make the other person happy for a while. And then, of course, if their needs aren't being met, then they get resentful because, the other person should have just known that eventually you're going to want to go where I like to go, and you should know where that is. And so, that's where that indirect behavior comes in with that.
Exactly. That's what it's called, indirect behavior. They're not real good at telling people what they need or what their needs are.
Right.
And so that's a problem. They don't express their needs. They don't get them out there easily. That's a weakness. And kind of related to that, but the next step forward in terms of relationship, what we see is that people who are primarily supine in an area can really live a life, very few boundaries in their life. They are completely getting overrun by others. Their life is not their own.
No. They can be doormats. A doormat is the word that's used with this one because there's no boundaries. They just get walked on by everyone, and they'll refer to themselves that way. I feel like a doormat in this relationship.
Well, and the whole thing of boundaries, we've done other podcasts on that, certainly a lot of articles, and that be sessions unto itself. But the whole concept of boundaries is that You got to take control of your life, knowing when to say yes, how to say no, and take control of your life. And we've mentioned it before, and we'll mention it again. There's some good resources out there. A book called Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend. There's a whole series of books. If you need help in that area, do it. Buy the book. Before you read it, prayerfully say, Lord, show me what I need to learn in here and give me grace to start doing it. And but that whole realm of boundaries, and sometimes even if people haven't read the book, they don't know how to implement them. And even, the good news is even someone with a supine temperament who is not good at saying what their needs are, they've got to learn how to set up boundaries. And by boundaries overrun means they just don't feel like they're control. They say yes to everything when some part of them saying no, no, no. And then sometimes they'll say no to something that maybe they want to really do, right? And they just can't get it right. And their temperament type is such that, and once again, it's a function of their temperament. They're what's called more of a dependent person. They don't like to be in charge of other people. They don't like to be in charge of situations. They want to be involved in the process. And even in things that involve them, they don't want somebody making the decision for them. But boy, it's helpful a lot of times if they can have somebody with them who can help them sort through the details.
I got a perfect example of that. I had a client who said, you know what? My husband went out on his lunch hour and he bought us a house. And I said, really? A house? Just like that? And I said, and she was angry. And I said, what, is it a bad house? No. It's an awesome house. And I said, does it have what you want in it? It's more than I could have ever expected in a house. And I said, well, why are you upset? Because he didn't ask me. He didn't include me in the decision. Now, a house, that's a pretty big deal.
No, that's a big deal. A house isn't like buying a, exactly.
But he was really trying to surprise her and bless her, and he went to the full throttle length to get her everything that she wanted, but he didn't stop and include her. And I think that's the whole big thing with the supine. They want to be included. If you include them, they're probably going to go along with whatever it is that you want to do. But if you don't include them, that's when you're going to start to get the anger.
Exactly.
Or in their case, they call it hurt, right? It hides. It hides as anger. It's anger. It's hiding behind I am hurt, but it's really anger. Yeah.
And that's a point worth emphasizing. Somebody who's supine, say, well, am I living and know somebody's supine? You'll very rarely see them maybe necessarily get angry, but you will hear them say when something goes sideways, they'll say, well, you hurt my feelings, or that hurt my feelings. Well, that's them expressing anger. They're angry.
Yes.
And rather than break furniture and throw things around or go off and pout,
they
will just say, you hurt my feelings. And it's important if you're a smart person with that and want to get along with that other person, your antennae, your spiritual antennae will pick up on that and recognize that as anger. But that's important. Yeah, their feelings are hurt. And yes, it can be. That's something that does something without including them, or they're not asked to be part of something. The supines, they'll be the ones that'll stand around at church after the service and people are going to lunch and they're not going to initiate, hey, let's go to lunch. But they're sitting there saying, oh, they hear about somebody going to lunch. Oh, please include me, invite me. And, they're hoping that somebody will do that. Once again, that they're not real good at expressing their needs. That's going to be the typical area. So, not expressing their needs, boundaries in their life typically overrun. Those are two of the main weaknesses. What's the third one?
They need to be recognized for what they do. I mean, if you've got a servant that's working toilessly behind the scenes, sometimes it's easy not to recognize them. And if they don't get at least a little bit of recognition, they don't need like the big presentation in front of everyone, but they need to hear, wow, you did a really great job, or we really noticed what you did. Because I've had clients come in and say, I did all this sewing and I did all of this planning and I did all of this work for this one big production at church. And I was the one that was behind the scenes and I had all these great ideas and I'm the one that brought them all to the table and we did them all. And nobody stopped and said thank you to me because I was the behind the scenes guy. I totally got overlooked. Not even one word of thank you. And I'll tell you what, that's pulled them out of that church situation because they didn't get the recognition that they wanted.
Exactly. And so, in those situations as we counsel people, we've talked about using counseling or temperaments in counseling separate situations. Our counsel, that person will say, well, look, if somebody doesn't thank you, you need to get your approval, just receive it from the Lord, right? And that's one of the ways to counter that, because people are going to fail us, and whatever you do it with all your heart as unto the Lord. Well, Lord, I'm doing this unto you. And so that can be counseling response to this. But once again, our focus here on this podcast is looking at the spiritual warfare side of it, understanding and recognizing that the demonic kingdom observes and sees and knows what's going on. And if we've got these demonic strongholds in us that we need deliverance from, then that's a deliverance issue, and that's important. But given these main weaknesses that we see, and there's others, but we're just covering 3 here, we want to now talk about our experience in terms of demonic strongholds that we see that operate heavily in people's lives. And so one of the most common things, I guess, the things that we would see is that demonic stronghold of fear operating.
Yeah, I think because the supine wants to please. I think the fear comes in with the enemy taunting them that they've like let somebody down, or they've disappointed someone, or if they've said the wrong thing. So typically you'll see spirits of insecurity, inadequacy, fear of failure, fear of rejection, worry, and then, hyperactive thoughts that lead to unrest because, their mind just keeps thinking, going over. Like I'll talk to different supine temperaments in the office and I'll say, do you lay in bed at night and just go over the day and everything that you said? And maybe I've offended this person, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm up at night just worrying that I've let someone down or I did the wrong thing.
And then, and in that way, there's somewhat can be similar to the melancholy, right? We talked about the minds who don't shut off, but this is a little different. Their thoughts
focused on others, not on themselves.
Yeah, how did they fail others? What could they have said or should have said maybe in that situation? But you're right. It's fear. So that's a big one.
Yeah, right? I think fear is a big one.
Insecurity in that realm of dealing with us. Yeah, fear of failure, just in general, not being good enough, not measuring up,
right,
and not doing enough, and because sometimes you start doing. If that's how you measure your worth by, and a lot of supines tend to measure the worth by how much they're doing. You're not doing enough,
right.
Fear. So
yeah, the supines have a hard time just being. They kind of
content.
Being content, just being. They just do. They want to do. That's how they feel like they get their respect. And so there's a lot of fear of failure if they're not doing it well.
Second stronghold area, major stronghold area, we see it's really under that strong man of what we consider the strong man of heaviness. And that's really a spirit of guilt that's at work in a person's life, right? How does that come about?
Well, I think, it wants you to feel obligated and responsible so it can kind of victimize you. They want the guilt thing makes you feel like you're not doing enough, like you're guilty. Its goal is to bring in like weariness, fatigue, and to wear you out because if you try to put up boundaries, and the other person like rebels against that, then that guilt spirit always kind of makes you feel like that you're left holding the bag, like. You're
can feed into kind of the codependent. I mean, we're not getting into codependency. That's a whole different topic. Do you think a lot of supines maybe have a tendency to gravitate into that codependency world?
I definitely think that's a very good point to bring up. Yeah, and then that guilt leaves them, kind of lonely and wallowing in self-pity too because they haven't performed well.
So heaviness and guilt there. And then another area that we see is under the realm of jealousy, the strong man of jealousy, and in the realm of bitterness, right? Because they, sometimes we've seen where those who are who want to rescue people, sometimes they become the victim, right? They become, and they get angry at being and feel like being used. I think supine rescuers almost always end up the victim because they overgive. Then the entitlement on the other side. They don't have the boundaries.
They have no boundaries. And then the other person becomes entitled and then they expect it. And then eventually the supine doesn't get asked. It's just, they're just expected to do it. And
then they get angry.
That's where the anger and the resentment comes in, right? They get frustrated. Yeah. And then, of course, it starts with the self-blaming and the self-anger and the self-impatience because they should have known better. And they know well enough, but usually they don't pick up on it because their heart is always to serve. They want to serve. So they'll go after these people with high-level needs. but then they don't know when to stop, and it crosses that line. And, I've heard people say, like even church people say, well, I just really wanted to be a servant for the pastor. And I got into the church, and, now I'm the church secretary. And here's the thing. Now they don't even ask me. They just expect me to do all this stuff that is not secretarial, and I'm out there doing it. I'm way out of my comfort zone, and now I'm angry because they don't even ask me anymore. They just put more and more on my plate, more and more on my plate. So,
okay. Yeah, that's, once again, you can just kind of see the progression there. There's a pure heart there and a pure desire to serve, and which is good, and then there's strengths with that, and then the weaknesses are there that our own flesh, coupled with the tactics of the demonic realm, will seek to pervert that and twist it and use an open door. For now, that person can be angry and they're bitter and they're guilty if they're not doing nothing,
right?
Not doing enough, and things just kind of get out of alignment. So those are some of the most common strategies that we see of the demonic kingdom trying to work in the open doors, and people end up with these strongholds in their life: fear, guilt, bitterness, anger, and for that, and even resentment. So given that, then once again, as we say, if you got demonic strongholds there, the only remedy is deliverance from the demonic spirits. So that's first and foremost. But aside from that and apart from that, then there's the element after, apart from deliverance, this whole one element of spiritual warfare is being able to discern and resist spirits. So we need to be able to discern the spirits when they come back into the house. So one of the realm of discerning of spirits, these being able to these thoughts, right, of guilt, or you're not doing enough, or you need to do this so people will like you. That's just part of the specific mind battles, I believe, that the supine temperaments really need to get a hold of. For some other temperaments, they're loner types. These thoughts, well, you're not doing enough, they're just going to blow all that off. We're not going to be motivated by that. But but if there's these spirits of guilt and whatnot coming upon them, then they need to capture those thoughts and replace those ungodly thoughts with godly thoughts. But what are some other specific things like they need to be sensitive to and be aware of for the tactics of the demonic realm?
Well, I think the enemy is going to try to get them to lean on people instead of leaning on God. They have a tendency to ask 500 people their opinion on something, and then they'll get confused. And their go-to place should be first to God. God's word, certainly, but to express their needs and their desires, then to the Lord first, and rely on Him, not rely on man.
Speak to them, to reveal things to them.
Right.
Right. All right. Yeah, I think the function of the person's temperament is they value help, godly counsel. Plans fail for lack of counsel. With many advisors, they succeed. So supine sometimes need somebody alongside to help them, not to tell them what to do.
One or two good.
Counsel, right? Advisors. That's not opinions, not the nose. Opinions like noses thing. You're right, and it's so they can do that as well. And then being able to get into this place of rest, right? Stop this. Get a place where they're not endlessly striving. Right.
There's a scripture in Ecclesiastes 2:22 through 23 that talks about that. It says, "Repent for anxious striving that brings you to unrest." It says, "What do people get for all their toil and anxious striving, which they labor under the sun? All their days of work is grief and pain, and even at night their minds do not rest." So that striving, that trying to please, you got to really be aware of that. You got to be aware that, you don't have to make everybody happy. Your first and foremost thing is to be pleasing before the Lord. And then at night, when your mind starts to do that spin, that unrest thing, there's a place where, you need to cast your thoughts upon the Lord. Listen, when you lay down at night, I don't know too many people where their minds just don't start to unwind the day. But this temperament, it's a little bit more. So when that stuff starts to come and you start to feel guilty, even at night, remember Romans 8:1, there's no condemnation in God. Just give these things over to the Lord and then shift your thought process. Pick something that you want to think about. Say, hey, I can think about what I want to think about. That's a good thing about having your own mind. If you want to think about laying in bed at night with your head laying on the Lord's chest and you telling Him how much you love Him, I tell you what, you'll go to sleep really fast. But you can change your thoughts and meditate on what you want to meditate on.
True, noble, right, pure, love, you're admirable.
Yep, Philippians 4:8. Just change it. And a good thing to do, too, is before you go to bed, if you've had a rough day, like I said, is release these things unto the Lord, and then find a psalm ask the Lord to give you a psalm, the number of a psalm, and go read the psalm. Pick out something in it that's encouraging, that shifts your focus to that good place of Philippians 4:8, and meditate on that before you go to bed. That's going to let you know the Lord is thinking about you, that He's got you written in His Word, and you're not going to go to bed depressed and sad and feeling guilty. And as you go to bed with your mind lifted up on things, there's a good tendency that you're going to wake up that way.
Exactly. That's good. That's good. That's a good way to end the day and a good way to start the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And the third suggestion we would make is that we talked about supines not being good at saying and sharing what's on their heart. You can learn how to be bold.
Oh, yeah.
People say, well, I'm not bold. But Paul even talks about coming boldly before the throne,
Mm-hmm.
getting grace and the help of God to be able to speak and say what's on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
You can learn how to do that, but you got to purpose. Say, no, I need to purpose to tell people close to me, my husband, my spouse, my life, my pastor, what's on my heart, what's on my mind. And most time they may not know, and they want to hear from you.
They do. They want to know you.
They want to know, and so be bold. Well, I don't want to put somebody out. I don't want to say I want a donut. Just say, no, I want a donut. This is what I need. I need a donut. And you can learn how to do that. Be bolder, not only before the Lord, but even before other people. And just do it. Just start taking baby steps.
Right.
And I think there's, that's just, and it's a tactic of the enemy just to keep you isolated in those thoughts thing and say, no, I'm going to step out. I'm going to say what's on my heart. I'm going to say what I need. You're not being selfish. You're not being rude. You're not thinking about you, and focused on you. You're doing what's right before the Lord. And as you get little victories, you'll get bigger victories.
I think that's a really good point, because you know what? This temperament stuffs. They stuff it all down. They don't say what they think. And then something triggers them where they just explode all at once. All the stuff comes pouring out of them. And it could be over something so minor that the other person just sits there and looks at them and thinks they're crazy. Wow, they blew up over that, because they don't have a clue all the other things that you've kept to yourself that you haven't spoken. So, yeah, you got to start to let those things out a little bit at a time, just so that you don't hold on to them all and become that boiling, angry, furious person that looks like a crazy woman or man.
Exactly. I think that's a good point to conclude on. Sweet, gentle spirits. Just be bold. Say what's on your mind. Give the grace of God. That servant's heart is a beautiful thing. You're not a doormat. You are the head and not the tail. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be an enabler. You're not to be used and abused, but learning how to stand up for yourself and say what's on your mind and your heart. That will help you, and it will diffuse a lot of the plans of the enemy coming against you. So anything else you want to add, Phil?
No, I think that's good.
All right. We hope you've enjoyed this session on the Supine Temperament. We're going to be talking about the Sanguine Temperament next time, the bright, sunshiny one, and continuing our series. We hope that you will come back for that. Encourage you to listen to the other podcasts in this series. We'd love to hear from you, as I mentioned before. Please help us by leaving a review on iTunes. Our station there is deliveranceministry.fm. You need to be a member logged into Apple and leave a review for us. We very much would appreciate it. Please also sign up for our resource library on the websites, where you get access to all of our podcasts, articles, slide shares, videos, a lot of huge group of videos on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is andbcounseling.com, and you'll really be blessed by that. Take a look also at our Warrior Partners page. It gives you an opportunity to be a part of the growth of Above and Beyond Christian Counseling. Help us to develop resources for more training and teaching of deliverance ministry, and also help us to help others who need and to receive and see the benefits of deliverance ministry. And also, if you feel a calling and an urging and maybe a tweaking of the Lord to pursue Christian counseling degrees or licensing, take a look at our Academy website. We have some excellent programs there as well. Once again, thank you for listening. We appreciate you very much listening to these podcasts and sharing them with your friends, sharing them with those who need to know about them. Please keep in touch with us, and we very much look forward to speaking with you again. God bless you.